My husband Tommy, M31, and I, F29, have been married for 5 years. We met during our sophomore year of college when I was 19 and he was 21. I was a shy art student, struggling to find my place in the bustling campus environment. Tommy was an appealing business major who seemed to effortlessly navigate the social scene. I still remember the day we met. It was at a mutual friend's party, and I was hiding in a corner, sketching in my notebook. Tommy approached me, genuinely interested in my art. He was the first person who didn't dismiss my passion as a hobby. We talked for hours that night, and he asked for my number before leaving. Our relationship moved quickly. Tommy was my first serious boyfriend, and I was swept off my feet by his charm and attention. He'd surprise me with flowers after class, leave sweet notes in my textbooks, and plan elaborate dates. I felt like I was living in a romantic movie. Looking back, there were red flags I chose to ignore. Tommy could be possessive, often getting jealous when I spent time with my male classmates on group projects. He'd make subtle comments about my clothes, suggesting I dress more appropriately. At the time, I interpreted this as him caring about me, not wanting to control me. After graduation, Tommy landed a job at a prestigious accounting firm in the city. I was still figuring out my career path, so I took a job as a barista to pay the bills while building my design portfolio. Tommy proposed a year later, and I said yes without hesitation. I thought I had found my happily ever after. The first couple years of marriage were good, or so I thought. We bought a small house in the suburbs and settled into domestic life. I eventually got a job as a graphic designer at a local marketing firm. Our life was comfortable, if not exactly exciting. But over time, things began to change. Tommy started working later hours and seemed distant. He'd criticize my cooking, saying it wasn't as good as his mother's. He'd make snide comments about my job, implying that it wasn't as important as his. I tried to brush these off, telling myself all couples go through rough patches. About 2 months ago, Tommy's behavior became even stranger. He was constantly on his phone, smiling at texts. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd snap that it was just work. He started going out more often, claiming he was meeting colleagues for drinks. Last week, while doing laundry, I found a receipt in Tommy's pocket from a restaurant across town. It was dated for a day he told me he was working. Late. My heart sank. I know I shouldn't have, but I checked his phone while he was in the shower. There were dozens of texts to a contact saved as Delilah W. Delilah is Tommy's ex-girlfriend from high school. They dated for all 4 years and were voted most likely to get married in their yearbook. Tommy had told me they broke up amicably when they went to different colleges and remained casual friends. The texts I saw were far from casual. They were flirty, filled with inside jokes and plans to meet up. There were even a few selfies she had sent him. I confronted Tommy about it when he got out of the shower. He immediately got defensive, accusing me of invading his privacy. After a heated argument, he admitted he'd been meeting Delilah for lunch or coffee over the past couple months. He swore nothing physical had happened between them and that they were just reconnecting as old friends. Tommy said he didn't tell me because he knew I'd be irrationally jealous. He refused to cut contact with Delilah, saying I needed to trust him. But how can I trust someone who's been lying to me? I feel so lost and betrayed. Tommy was my first real relationship. Before him, I only had a couple of brief high school boyfriends. Nothing serious. I realize now how much of myself I've lost in this relationship. In college, I was passionate about my art. I dreamed of getting an MFA and maybe teaching one day. But Tommy discouraged this, saying it wasn't practical. He'd make comments about starving artists and suggest I focus on more commercial design work. Over time, I stopped painting for pleasure. My sketchbooks gathered dust as I focused on my job and being a good wife. I've also lost touch with many of my old friends. Tommy never liked my college best friend, Emily. He said she was a bad influence because she was single and liked to go out. Eventually, I stopped making plans with her to avoid arguments with Tommy. Now, I feel so isolated. My family lives across the country, and I haven't seen them in over a year. Tommy always had excuses for why we couldn't visit. Work was too busy, it was too expensive, etc. I realize now he was slowly cutting me off from my support system. I'm starting to see how controlling Tommy has been throughout our relationship. He manages our finances, deciding how much allowance I get each month from my own salary. He has opinions on everything: what I wear, what I eat, how I spend my free time. I've been walking on eggshells trying to keep him happy. Now I'm questioning everything. Was our whole relationship a lie? Did Tommy ever really love me? Or was I just a convenient replacement when things didn't work out with Delilah? Maybe he's been comparing me to her all this time, finding me lacking. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to forgive Tommy and try to work things out. We've built a life together, and the thought of starting over at 29 is terrifying. But a bigger part feels like this betrayal is unforgivable. Even if nothing physical happened with Delilah, the lying and sneaking around feel like cheating to me. I'm also afraid of how Tommy will react if I try to leave. He has a temper, and while he's never been physically violent, he can be verbally cruel when he's angry. Plus, I'm financially dependent on him. My job doesn't pay enough for me to afford my own place in our expensive city. I feel trapped and alone. I don't know who to turn to or what my next step should be. Should I give Tommy another chance? Should I leave? How do I even begin to rebuild my life if I do? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I feel like I'm drowning and don't know which way is up anymore. Update 1. Thank you all for the overwhelming support and advice on my original post. It's been about 3 weeks since then, and a lot has happened. I wanted to give an update. After reading your comments, I realized I needed to have another serious conversation with Tommy and get the full truth. I sat him down and told him I needed complete honesty or our marriage was over. At first, he tried to stick to his original story, but when I remained firm, he finally broke down. Tommy admitted that he and Delilah had kissed during one of their meetups. He swore it only happened once and that he felt terrible about it afterwards. He said Delilah had initiated it, catching him off guard, but he didn't stop it immediately. Tommy begged for forgiveness, promising to cut all contact with Delilah. He offered to let me see all their messages and said I could track his location if I wanted. I was devastated all over again. Even if it was just a kiss, it felt like a huge betrayal. I told Tommy I needed some time and space to think. I packed a bag and went to stay with a coworker for a few days. Being away from Tommy gave me some much-needed perspective. During this time, I did a lot of soul-searching. I realized how much I'd lost myself in our relationship over the years. I hadn't picked up a paintbrush in months. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something just for myself, without considering Tommy's opinion first. I decided to reach out to my old college roommate, Emily. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years, ever since a big fight where Tommy had accused her of trying to lead me astray by inviting me to a girls' night out. I was nervous to call her, but Emily was incredibly understanding. We met up for coffee, and it felt like no time had passed. Emily listened without judgment as I poured out everything that had happened. Then she shared her own perspective, reminding me of incidents from college that I'd forgotten or downplayed. She reminded me of the time Tommy had shown up unannounced to a study group I was in, angry that I was working closely with a male classmate, or the time he'd accidentally spilled wine on a dress he deemed too revealing, right before we were supposed to go to a party. Emily said she'd always thought Tommy was controlling, but didn't want to overstep by saying anything. Hearing these stories from an outside perspective made me see how unhealthy our dynamic had become. I started to remember other incidents, times when Tommy had belittled my achievements or made me feel guilty for wanting to pursue my own interests. I also reached out to my younger sister, Mia. We've always been close, but our contact had become less frequent over the years. When I told her what was going on, she wasn't as surprised as I expected. Mia confessed that she'd been worried about me for a while, noticing how I seemed to have less energy and enthusiasm whenever we did talk. She had even suggested to our parents that they should visit, sensing something was off. Talking to Emily and Mia made me realize how isolated I'd become. I'd let Tommy become my whole world, and in the process, I'd lost important connections and parts of myself. During my time away, Tommy's behavior swung between extremes. He'd call or text constantly, alternating between profuse apologies and angry accusations. He'd promise to change 1 minute, then claim I was overreacting the next. It was emotionally exhausting. After a week, I decided to go back home. I felt I needed to face the situation head-on to make a final decision. When I arrived, the house was a mess. It was clear Tommy hadn't been taking care of himself. There were empty takeout containers everywhere and a worrying number of empty beer bottles. Tommy broke down when he saw me, begging me not to leave him. He promised to go to counseling, to be better. For a moment, I was tempted. The thought of throwing away 5 years of marriage was terrifying. But then I looked around at our home. A home I realized I'd never felt truly comfortable in, and I knew what I had to do. I told Tommy I wanted a divorce. He didn't take it well at first. There was a lot of crying, bargaining, and anger, but eventually he seemed to deflate, as if accepting the inevitable. We're now in the process of separating our finances and figuring out next steps. It's painful and complicated, but I know it's the right decision for me. I'm scared about starting over at 29, but also excited about the possibilities. I've moved in with Emily temporarily while I figure out my living situation. It feels good to have my old friend back in my life. She's been incredibly supportive, even helping me set up a small studio space in her spare room where I can start painting again. I'm also reconnecting with my family. My parents were upset that I hadn't told them what was going on sooner, but they've been very supportive. They're even talking about helping me financially so I can apply to that MFA program I always dreamed about. There's still a long road ahead. I know there will be difficult days and moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about my future. Thank you all again for helping me see things clearly. Your support gave me the courage to stand up for myself and choose my own happiness. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have been progressing. The divorce process is underway, and while it's been challenging, I'm feeling more confident in my decision with each passing day. Tommy initially tried to drag things out, his behavior swinging wildly between begging me to reconsider and lashing out in anger. There was one particularly unsettling incident about a month ago. Tommy showed up at Emily's place unannounced late one night, clearly drunk. He started yelling, demanding to see me and accusing Emily of turning me against him. We had to call the police to get him to leave. It was scary, but also eye-opening. I realized how much I'd been walking on eggshells around his moods for years, always trying to manage his emotions to avoid scenes like this. After that incident, I got a temporary restraining order against Tommy. It felt like an extreme step, but Emily and my family convinced me it was necessary for my safety. Tommy's behavior has been more subdued since then, though he's still trying to delay the divorce proceedings. On a more positive note, I've started painting again. Emily helped me set up a small studio space in her apartment, and I've been spending every free moment there. It feels like rediscovering a part of myself that had been dormant for too long. I forgot how therapeutic it could be to lose myself in the creative process. I've also been focusing on rebuilding other aspects of my life. I've reconnected with several old friends from college, and we've started having regular game nights. It's been wonderful to laugh and just enjoy the company of others without feeling like I'm being judged or monitored. My relationship with my family has improved too. My parents came to visit for a week, and it was the most time we'd spent together in years. They were upset at first that I hadn't confided in them sooner about the problems in my marriage, but they've been incredibly supportive. My dad even helped me start the process of untangling my finances from Tommy's, which has been a huge relief. Financially, things are tight. I'm still working at the marketing firm, but I've also picked up some freelance design work to make ends meet. It's not easy, but it feels good to be self-reliant. I'm learning to budget and manage my own money for the first time in years. I ran into Delilah, Tommy's ex, at a coffee shop last week. It was awkward at first, but we ended up talking for a while. She apologized for her role in the situation and revealed that Tommy had told her we were separated when they reconnected. It doesn't excuse her actions, but it was oddly validating to hear that Tommy had been lying to her too. Delilah also shared some stories about their relationship in high school that made me realize Tommy's controlling behavior wasn't new. As for Tommy, I've heard through mutual friends that he's been telling people I left him for no reason, painting himself as the victim. It stings, but I'm trying not to let it bother me. I know the truth, and that's what matters. I've had to block him on social media and ask friends not to pass along information about him. It's hard but necessary for my peace of mind. Looking ahead, I'm cautiously optimistic. I've started researching MFA programs again, allowing myself to dream about pursuing that long-forgotten goal. It's scary to think about going back to school at 30, but also exciting. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control of my own life and future. There are still tough days. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, panicking about the uncertainty ahead. But then I remind myself of how far I've come in just a few months, and I feel stronger. I'm learning to trust myself again, to listen to my own instincts instead of constantly seeking approval from others. I know I have a long way to go in healing and rebuilding my life, but I'm proud of myself for taking these first steps. Thank you all for your continued support through this journey. It means more than I can express. Update 3. It's been almost a year since my original post, and I wanted to give a final update. The divorce was finalized 2 months ago, marking the official end of that chapter of my life. It's a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, anxiety, and hope all swirling together. The last few months of the divorce process were draining. Tommy fought against it until the end, alternating between trying to guilt me into reconciliation and making the process as difficult as possible. There were moments when I almost gave in, the fear of the unknown almost overwhelming me. But with the support of my friends, family, and all of you, I stayed firm in my decision. I'm still living with Emily, but I've started looking for my own place. As grateful as I am for her support, I'm ready to have my own space again. I'm hoping to find a small apartment with room for an art studio. It's exciting to think about decorating a place that's entirely my own, filled only with things that bring me joy. My artwork has been a lifeline through all of this. I've been painting more than ever, using it as a way to process my emotions. Last month, I took a huge step and submitted some pieces to a local art show. To my shock and delight, one of my paintings was accepted. Seeing my work displayed in a gallery, even a small local one, was a surreal and affirming experience. This success gave me the confidence to finally apply to MFA programs. I've been accepted into a part-time program at a nearby university, which will allow me to continue working while studying. Classes start in the fall, and I'm equal parts terrified and thrilled. Financially, things are still tight, but I'm managing. I picked up a teaching assistant position at a local community college, leading some introductory art classes. It doesn't pay much, but it's rewarding work and good experience. Between that, my day job, and some freelance design work, I'm staying afloat. I've started dating again, very casually. It's been strange and sometimes awkward, but also fun to rediscover that side of myself. I'm taking things slow and being careful not to lose myself in a relationship again. I'm learning that it's okay to have boundaries and to prioritize my own needs and goals. I've had a few coffee dates and even went to an art gallery opening with someone last week. It's nice to enjoy male company without the pressure or expectations I'd grown accustomed to with Tommy. I'm in no rush to get into another serious relationship, but it's reassuring to know that option is out there when I'm ready. My relationship with my family continues to strengthen. I've been video chatting with my parents weekly, and my sister Mia is planning to visit next month. They've been my rock through all of this, offering emotional support and practical advice. Dad has even joked about taking an art class so he can understand my artsy talk better. I ran into Tommy at the grocery store last week. It was awkward and tense, but we managed to exchange polite hellos before going our separate ways. Seeing him stirred up some emotions, but not in the way I expected. Instead of the longing or anger I might have felt before, I mostly felt pity. He looked tired and unhappy. For a moment, I felt a twinge of guilt, wondering if I'd made the right choice. But then I remembered how light and free I've felt these past months, and I knew I had. There have been some unexpected challenges, too. I've had to navigate social circles where Tommy and I shared friends. Some have taken sides, while others have tried to remain neutral. It's been painful to lose some friendships, but it's also shown me who my true friends are. I'm grateful for those who have stood by me and offered support without judgment. Looking back on everything that's happened, I'm amazed at how much has changed in a year. There are still moments of doubt and fear, especially as I embark on this new phase of my life. Starting a graduate program at 30 feels daunting, and there are days when I wonder if I'm making the right choices. But then I look at my paintings, or I spend an evening laughing with friends, or I get excited about a new project at work, and I remember why I made this decision. I'm rediscovering parts of myself that I thought were lost, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. To anyone going through something similar, know that it does get better. It's not easy, and there will be tough days, but you're stronger than you think. Trust yourself, and don't be afraid to lean on others for support. Thank you all again for being part of this journey with me. Your support and advice truly made a difference. I may not post updates anymore, but I'll carry the kindness and wisdom you've shared with me as I move forward into this new chapter of my life.